Yo, 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 yo. Is it showing on the capture side of things? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I kind of look like that cat. Meow, 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 meow. There's a cat. Kind of makes that kind of sound when it gets scared about stuff. Ew. So I was trying something. If that is my microphone, right? Current system language, Microsoft text-to-speech enable. Sup, Dinnerbox, welcome to the live stream. This is your live stream today. Thank you for being an SB patron, I appreciate it. We are reviewing an album today, aren't we? We're reviewing Bewitched by Laufey. I'm hoping someone will correct me on it. If Laufey isn't the way to say it. I swear I looked on their YouTube channel and that's what they said it was. I could be tripping. But how you doing? It's very hot in here. I'm gonna open the door a little bit to let some fresh air in. We've got a big day ahead of us though. Got at least a couple of hours. If we switch over to here we are. We're at ourselves an album live stream. Here we are, Laufey on the screen. We got a total of 14 tracks for this monthly album review. Which is good. Which is really good. I do quite like that. I think it's a good amount of tracks, a good length. Just checking whether or not you can hear the fan, because it's a bit hot in here today. Her name in Icelandic is kind of hard to pronounce. I imagine it might be. Icelandic is not the easiest language in the world, if I'm not mistaken. So I thought that OBS had auto captions, because I don't know if you guys can see it. If I go to Tools, and I go Captions Experimental, it comes up with this little box. I don't know if you can see it. And it has audio source. Here. Yeah. Because I think the usual plugin for audio is not working with the captions, but everything else should be good. Have you got a track that's your favorite off of this, by the way, Dinnerhe? Blue Dinner Box? Is there a track that is your favorite? I mean, it looks like Promise and From the Start have a lot of plays. I mean, that's like almost 1 billion plays. That's wild. But yeah, we may as well get into it, eh? Should we do this? Should we go on this epic adventure through it? Just disclaimer, I'm going to be focusing on listening through these tracks, and then I'll sort of focus on who's chatting in the chat, because I find that if I try and multitask, I get confuzzled, you know. But if anyone's got any questions about anything that's watching this, or if you're watching this after the live stream, feel free to leave a comment. Happy to talk about some stuff with you in relation to this. Let's just get into Dreamer, shall we? Let's do it.
Let me be a dreamer, let me float. I can see the whole world from my own little cloud up by the Milky Way. I'll stay here forever and a day.
I love the sound design of the piano around me, or behind me.
You can't pin me down. I fear all solid ground. I'd rather be alone at tea. Love when nobody's making me. Oh, boys just make me cry. Believe me, I have tried. I've made my rounds, kissed some mouths. Trust me, I don't want a single soul around. Oh, I'm giving up, I'm throwing in my hat. I can't take another lifeless little chat. I'm moving up into a cloud, into my fantasy. And no
Phenomenal
boy's
vibrato.
gonna be so smart as to try and pierce my porcelain heart. No boy's gonna kill the dreamer in me. Some might call me mad. The worst this town has had. I fell right down the rabbit hole. Legends say I fell so fast I lost my soul. My melancholic days are few and far away. I've had enough, called it off. As far as I'm concerned, the switch is numb to love. Oh, I'm giving up, I'm throwing in my hat. I can't take another lifeless little chat. I'm moving up into a cloud, into my fantasy. And no boy's gonna be so smart as to try and pierce my porcelain heart. And no boy's gonna kill the dreamer in me. Yeah, no boy's gonna be so smart as to try and pierce my porcelain heart. No boy's gonna kill the dreamer in
So that was Dreamer, track 1 for today from Laufey. What do you think this is about, Blue Dinner Box? What do you think this is about? So I think that this is about Laufey talking about the hopes and dreams they have for the future and how they don't want that to be ruined by another boy. They talk about so smart as to try to pierce my porcelain heart. No boy's gonna kill the dreamer in me. It's interesting that they say gonna be so smart. Sometimes smart can have a secondary meaning as being like kind of cheeky or like a bit too clever, you know what I mean? So I kind of what we're going for there. Maybe she kind of self-identifies and maybe she is dreaming too much. I'm not sure. I'm throwing in my head, I can't take another lifeless little chat. I'm moving up into the cloud in my fantasy. Ultimately, just really satisfying. So part of what makes this track work so well is immediately Laufey's vocal style. Clearly very comfortable in the hidden chest voice, great vocal technique. Legatos and vibrato passages are fantastic. The backing harmonies are really nice as well. There's an inherent sweetness to them, and they're not always storytelling. Sometimes they're just sort of humming melodies and harmonies along the way, and then Laufey kind of brings herself back into it in a way that's sort of very satisfying. There's also a really kind of charming expression to it that's very kind of well measured and almost kind of intimate with how quiet it is. It is kind of like this immense amount of body to it. It's very much a sort of a vintage feel. It reminds me a lot of music from like the early 19th, 20th century, and it's just that almost sort of like crooner aesthetic. I think that part of what makes it sound so peaceful and almost dreamlike are the instrumental patterns and layers there. It's really great to listen to the sound of those keys, and the brushes on the kit there are nice and smooth. There's no harsh textures. The bass reinforces the root notes really neatly. And while we have several different areas within this track that sort of effortlessly go between one another, it's not uninteresting.
And pierce my porcelain heart. And
You know, you got those cool responses with the very sort of like vocal layers on the side there. You have dynamic range to the performance. It's just we're not trying to be sort of like attention grabby with things.
nobody's making her and a day.
And that kind of barbershop approach to the earlier part as well is just really neat. It kind of creates this sort of homely feel that shows we can not only be enough on our own just with our different layers, but we also are attentive enough to understand that even though we're putting a lot of interesting music forward, we can't take the listener's attention for granted. So
Love when nobody's making me. Oh, boys, just
and I just think that there's just this sweetness throughout the performance and authenticity as well. You know, it's someone having a very sort of like calm conversation about it. You know, it makes me wonder what the rest of the album is going to be out with it being Bewitched, you know, as Dreamer.
to a cloud into my fantasy. And no boy's gonna
But yeah, we have extensions and the chord progressions that elicit a sense of emotional complexity to it, but because they're kind of like tempered, it's got a sleepy feel to it without that much high end resonance. If there are parts that are on the side there, like you're surrounded in the ether of the music. The production value on the track is fantastic as well. Really happy with the quality of the overall performance across the different drum space and keys, and as well as Laufey as well, with the very sort of like vocal layers on top of that. But they're recorded well, not overproduced. We clearly have sort of proper vocal techniques, so we don't need help in post. And in general, it sounds commercial grade with its stereo side of things. So just a fantastic start to proceedings with Dreamer. It's a really good piece, man. Really good piece. We've got second best though, track number 2.
I'll never forget how stupid in love I felt. I'll always regret how I couldn't ever tell that you walked a little faster, left me behind, kissed me with some.
Have we listened to this one before? I get the impression we might have.
Loved you so much that I settled for less. Oh, you were my everything. I was your second best. Lying awake, I'd watch as you dream at night.
A Waltzish flow with the triplets there.
Nightingale singing half-hearted lullabies. With you swung me around in that midsummer dance, held me in close as you thought of your past. I love way too much, oh this hurts to confess. Oh, you were my everything, I was your second best. You've given me nothing to miss. Honestly, life has been much better since I spoke to you last. Why am I still wondering if I stand a chance? Oh, if you'd have me back. Everyone warned me you were a bad idea. I never listened. Maybe I will next year. When I've walked
strings niche so nicely with those additional vocal layers on the sides.
Still a little in love with this mess. Oh, you are my everything. I'm just your second best. Second best.
So I feel like this one, it was great to have those additional guitar takes, just a different layer. We might have guitars in the first one, but they were more pronounced here with just Laufey and them. And I just think there is a sweetness to the tone there, and it's very tender with the triplet phrasing that carries on to those cymbal hits with the triplets. It's really soothing, you know. With this track, I think Laufey is talking about how initially they got involved with someone who they got warned about, and they eventually came to recognize it was not their best decision, and but they also don't listen to other people, you know. They had wonderful times together, like you swung me around in that midsummer dance, held me close as you thought of your past. You know, it's basically always feeling like you're just not enough for that person, even though they're still trying to keep you there and have their cake and eat it too. I feel like this, alongside the previous track, will be subject matters that people can relate to. I feel like part of the beauty of Laufey's music is that they do typically talk about things that are intrinsically personal, but they're not too internalized or too niche in order to be misrepresentable, I suppose. Yeah, I think I mean I personally can sort of relate to this. And part of the reason this track works so well is that Laufey is just so endearing with the way they communicate. It's just such a lovely sound to it with the expression of the vocals, the quietness of it. It almost becomes ASMR-ish at points. And you listen and it's just so intimate. You can hear the sadness in their voice, and it's further pushed by what's going on with some of the guitar arpeggios that you have. Hey, who do we have here, by the way? Who is this? Who is this? I'm going to actually just go to Deep L and gonna translate this. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you, Guo Shuming. Yeah, I think it's just a wonderfully relaxing voice as well. Yeah, beautiful voice. Laufey is just very peaceful to listen to. So, where was I? I was talking, I think, about the way that the guitar is interlocked with the feel of the vocals. I think the breathiness of what's going on with those ride cymbals on the drum kit is really fantastic. I love the way that they just fill the room, and how there are other parts we kind of trade off between main vocals and sides. Like at the end of the first verse, we then went into this part where it kind of flowed out and it expanded. And it was just this kind of A and B side between the quietness of those guitars and Laufey. The strings were awesome. I love the sound of the strings. I love the way they kind of like just rose alongside the vocal takes and were just so tender and reinforced a lot of the sweetness of the major and minor elements of those chord progressions on the side. Just an immensely satisfying track. But like, it's also just so well mixed and mastered. The production quality is solid there, and it's just nice to hear those jazzy intonations interspersed with sort of, I suppose, it's not purely poppy subject matter by any means, you know. There's plenty of jazz that talks about relationships and kind of stuff that Laufey is discussing, but I just do want to continue to celebrate what Laufey has done with the marrying of the different genres in this day and age. They really have helped push it forward in a very positive way. So second best is another really, really solid effort. I'm liking this album so far. We've got number 3, Haunted. Further emphasis on the strings. By the way, I apologize. It was Takashan. Actually, I apologize. Yeah. I came up with Guo Shuming. That's Takashan X7K. So thank you to Takashan X7K.
Pale moonlight, misty eyes. I'll allow myself to have him just tonight. I hold on to every ounce of sin. I know he don't love me quite like I love him.
Great unison there rhythmically.
I swear to myself as he leaves at dawn, this will end till he haunts me again.
I wonder if this ties into the previous track or whether they're separate.
Rose perfume,
Bossa Nova?
low lit room. I'll pretend you'll stay forever. Lay me down, ghostly sounds haunt the hallways as he wraps me around, and I hold on to every ounce of sin. I know he don't love me quite like I love him. I swear to myself as he leaves at dawn, this will end till he haunts me again.
All right. So that one, Haunted, seems more like a track about like a one night stand or something like that. And sort of like allowing ourselves to be taken by them with the hope or the assumption, or rather maybe the misplaced hope, that we will be we won't be bothered by them until they come back. So, you know, they won't be haunted. It'll just be like that's the only time they'll be affected by them kind of thing. And I think this is one of the most intoxicatingly beautiful ways I've heard the story being told. It's so human. I know he don't love me quite like I love him. It's just so kind of blunt, I suppose, in a way where it's like not trying to beat around the bush with that regard. But then go back to being poetic with the "this will end till he haunts me again" part. And we kind of go through this a second time, almost like the first part is after we go to the restaurant, and the second part is when we actually go and spend the night together, and then they leave the next morning at dawn. It's like Laufey manages to discuss things that are common in modern music, and I assume they were probably back then as well, like in a lot of the era that this music kind of harkens from, but they do it in a way that, because of the different instrumental parts, because of the different styling, is just so unique, and it's profusely refreshing because of that. So I appreciate what we're trying to accomplish here, and I think that they put their own stamp on it. I think the fact that there is just this kind of inherently spooky string section at the start, but then it's like kind of very pretty sounding. There is a kind of a whistle, almost like the shimmer of wind going through it. It's so delicate. It's almost like the illusion we have is potentially going to be shattered at any point just due to the fragility of the sound of the music itself. But then there's a push towards a more consistent beat and kind of groove to it. Sup, Purple Thing 121. Hopefully you're well. Welcome to the live stream. I'm just very sad at, yeah.
I don't want to go to sleep yet.
I mean, it just the delivery of the lines. It's kind of a similar approach to how you'd imagine someone speaking late at night. You know, it's very soothing and peaceful, and it's very similar to the way we've communicated in other parts of the album so far. We haven't tried to be too sort of blunt at any stage, and I don't think it would have benefited us to have been that way. It's just a piece where they sell the atmosphere that they're describing. And during the conversations, there is that flow of the guitar with the bossa nova kind of like pattern on the percussion, but you just get this wonderful sort of wafting sort of string section that goes in and out and highlights certain sort of chord progressions in a very sort of smooth that's what I'm looking for. It kind of sounds like a film score or a soundtrack to an old style movies or something like a black and white film.
Rose perfume.
And there's these effervescent kind of combinations of different elements at different stages, but you know, the question chords that we have in some arpeggios on the guitars, or the resolution only comes occasionally. And even then at the end, I like that we kind of go to the minor on the last sort of main part of the verse, because it implies that this is not necessarily a happy ending. I like that we are comfortable allowing there to be a sort of emotional friction there, to be real about the place we're in. We have some really beautiful kind of transitions to certain chords that are very jazzy, but we allow the audience to recognize that we're not particularly happy about the situation at the end. But then again, the flow, the kind of wistful nature of everything, the fuzziness, the kind of glow of it is nonetheless sort of like it's a situation where you're going to go to sleep anyways, and things are going to be okay despite the difficulties we're dealing with. So there's an incredible amount of emotional nuance on display here from Laufey. They're incredibly mature as a musician. The music is sophisticated with its approach. And I don't think there's a note out of place. They create these environments within each track that you simply have to allow yourself to be lost and to appreciate, whilst again still being relatable. But yeah, we got Must Be Love, track number 4.
Time's moving so much slower lately. It's like the world's playing a joke, laughing at me for falling foolishly again. But something's different
Dominant 7th chord.
with you. Traffic on Sunset doesn't faze me. I'm just unusually composed. That is until I touch you, and I can't pretend I lose myself again. I do. I'm all in, I'm falling, can't get back up, can't think right, too tongue-tied, it must be love. Friends asking me where I've been hiding. I'm losing hours in your eyes, lost in your wonderland. I hope I'm never found. There's no one else around tonight. I'm not so used to being happy.
Fantastic
Now I can
addition on the
float
sides.
down every street. something out of me, the kind I swore I'd never be. I'm awake inside a dream. I'm all in, I'm falling, can't get back up, can't think right, too tongue-tied. Come kiss me, convince me, this must be, it must be love. Must be
So that was wonderfully charming. Must Be Love by Laufey. Track number 4 for today, right? So I think this is a song about someone who is going through life and realizing that they're being affected by this person. Everyday things are making them sort of react differently. And I think after the song about being haunted, maybe we're realizing, actually, no, we're falling further and further for that person. They swore they'd never be a sappy, stupid something, you know, but they're bewitched by this person. And can't think right, too tongue-tied, come kiss me, convince me this must be, it must be love. And I think the earnest, honest approach to the vocals combined with the very sort of like sincere guitar sort of like accompaniment with the occasional voices on the side illustrate more of a kind of a brazen, down-to-earth understanding of the situation they're in.
It doesn't faze me.
You know, a lot of the interest comes from the... I'm sort of like 50-50 on whether it's a chromatic or not for the second chord of the main sort of progression there with the fingerstyle guitar, but I like that we kind of tumble downwards in certain parts because it almost sounds like that's what Laufey is doing emotionally in the situation. I think the strings work very well here because they have a similar kind of feel to the backing vocals. They just further enhance them. I think that's what I was trying to sort of communicate with previous tracks, is that the strings aren't really ever particularly sharp, even if there are sort of main sort of lead layers that are a nice sort of alternate sort of main melody to Laufey's vocals. They're often there to make it sound incredibly sweet and gentle. It's just the most easy listening music that I've heard in quite a while. And I think there's a place for this kind of music in everyday life. I think a lot of music is inherently stressful because it's often made by musicians who are just desperate for your attention, or they do everything they can to either pretend that they don't care, or they just make music that's just inherently kind of like endorphin throttling because they themselves need music to be that way. But I feel like Laufey is the antithesis of that in an incredibly positive way. And there's just a wonderful dynamic range. I think as a closing comment to the recording as well, as per that part where the vocals just went way up like that, way up. It's just fantastic to hear that we're not trying to smother the volume of the piece and not trying to sort of choke things off. I think that's really cool. Really cool. So, yeah. Great music, man. Great music. I think that as well with just the guitar, it does just kind of sound like they're alone in their room a little bit. I don't think it's necessarily a benefit to have less is more in terms of instrumental performances because, Laufey is a phenomenal vocalist who was incredibly adept at picking different note choices and just effortlessly cascading from one position to another with various sort of diatonic and chromatic runs. But it's nice to know we have a different identity or position for each track, and I just think we haven't missed yet. While You're Sleeping, track number 5.
friends would say it was meant to be. I'll never forget the first time I saw you there. Primrose at 3, you had all of me without saying a word. I don't recognize myself. I'm dancing down streets, smiling to strangers, idiotic things. I trace it all back, 3:30 a.m. That night something turned in my heart. While you were sleeping, I fell in love.
And just that like feedback loop, that repetition of the main sort of vocal or kind of melody or harmony in the background and like the ether with heaps of reverb on it, like 70% of the mix. And then you have the strings in the upper register, up an octave kind of coming out with that. It's just very satisfying when that comes back, and it helps to tie the track together into a new part.
I can't quite believe you think I'm beautiful. Must be a trick, a tag in your it, kind of foolery. Then you take my hand, kiss me on the cheek. A light pink bouquet, a promise you'll stay, and I start to believe. I don't recognize myself. I'm writing a love song, who've I become? There must be something wrong. I trace it all back, 3:30 a.m. That night something turned in my heart. While you were sleeping, I fell in love.
Yeah. So I think that I'll just be right back. Cool. Just realized it was a bit dark in here, eh? It was a bit dark in the room. So what do we want to say about this? What do we want to say about this? It's clear to me at this point that this is meant to be a concept album. I don't know how familiar you all are with concept albums or my sort of like interpretation of a concept album, but effectively my understanding of a concept album is not that it necessarily needs to be experimental or avant-garde, but it's more like a theme that is discussed across the entirety of it. And I think that from Dreamer, I get the impression that we were expecting that no boy, no man could ever bewitch her. And inevitably what's occurred is that they've had that one night stand and she's just fallen in love, head over heels for him. And she's initially tried to sort of discredit or kind of separate herself from the reality of that even occurring. But what we have now is she's accepting it and she's making a love song, and this is something that's sort of like maybe antithetical to her existence. She's just not really sure why this is happening. It seems incredibly strange to her. And so I think that this is going to be a fun album because at this point in time, I understand where we're going, and it's just incredibly satisfying to know that we're in safe hands. Like, I feel like the moment you kind of know an artist or a band is in a direction with something, you either know that it's going to pay off in a way where it could sort of respective to the style of story that we're telling, or you get a surprise and it's unexpected, so it's more exciting, or it goes horrifically wrong and then it's just, damn, what happened? I think that variety box albums are fantastic and I enjoy it. but I also like when we have like a tail that we're following along it. So yeah, I think that there is, how to describe it. So I think almost at times Laufey sounds kind of very similar in her overexpression and vocal style to previous tracks. Like there's nothing that is alien to what we've heard before, but there is this sort of like I like a confusion that's kind of communicated with why she's in this position in the first place. It's like she herself is trying to figure out how she got there.
I don't was meant to be. I still can't believe that you noticed me.
And so we have a major leaning over the cross of this track as we further explore our understanding of the situation, with some really beautiful sounding steel string guitars on the sides there, exploring those extensions and the harmonies. And it's very gentle with some of the 6th or 7th chords, or even sort of like ninths we have occasionally, with some occasional dominant 7ths or like parallels maybe. But the chord note push of the kit propels us forward, allowing for 16th notes within that, 16th triplets with like a straight 4/4 phrasing.
3:30 a.m. that night something
I think there are some like keys that come in certain parts as well and highlight when she says like then. They highlight certain words and that kind of clarifies you know, your thought process. You're like, oh, that's a wonder. What's happening next? Why is that sounding out now? It's kind of like the idea they had when there were the kind of heavily reverbed or kind of misty sounding vocal takes and little breaks, and then the strings kind of rise up there. And a lot of this is very much question chords as well, which, okay, by a question chord, I mean it's one that deliberately sounds unresolved within a harmony. So it's like you need another chord to come in to be able to sort of like finish or finalize it. You know, like the bridge sections are tremendous as well, how they're not, like it's not an alien idea to have a different chord starting that's kind of dissonant, not dissonant, but like it goes against the grain of the calmness of a lot of the others with its unexpected direction. But if you kind of sweeten things with like an especially satisfying 3rd chord or something like that, you can kind of go back down to an even meter. I mean, it's just rim shots and kicks as well, you know.
I'd something, an ocean away, the heavens would sit.
And it's just such a simple bass line as well, for the most part. Like, I'm cherry picking certain parts simply because I feel like I have enough of the song to be able to discuss it at this point. But I suppose as a closing statement, with While You Were Sleeping, it's more of what we've heard before, because I think we're kind of in a transitory phase between our lack of awareness of how much we're loved and how much we deserve love, and this new environment we're in where we kind of explore how this person, whether we're going to have a positive relationship with this person or not, despite the fact that we've been warned about them. So I assume that's where we have Lovesick. There's probably also more I can say about these tracks. I'm just trying to sort of like reserve judgment for the end with my final thoughts there. And I feel like as a music reviewer, if you're trying to sort of like break down each track in further excruciating detail, I mean like going through it like every 10 seconds by 10 seconds or something like that, you can often come across things you repeat. So Lovesick, the first track with 100 million plays.
In my home, deathly silence when alone. Oh, I wish that you were here right now.
She just goes up into a high range so neatly.
So unlike me, somehow I fell in love in just 3 nights. Those November days still haunting me. When the gold rays.
Oh, she's a bit stronger with this one.
And my hair got caught in the wind, the choir sang a melancholic hymn. In the morning, you would be gone, I'd be mourning, trying to hold on to the memory of your lips
It's those little things where we kind of come in after the beat or just slightly after the hit, and it's not what you'd necessarily expect, because a lot of the time you want the words to land in time with certain hits. That's what happens across most music, because it's just, aside from it being kind of like a standard, it's more, when you have them afterwards, there's less sort of space, because you're filling in the offbeats with words and stuff like that. So this is more, I suppose, more content in there, for lack of a better word.
Let me in your atmosphere, inching closer, but I fear that I'll love so much you'll slip away. Getting twisted in my head, dreams are nightmares in my bed, since the last night that I spent with you. When the gold
This does feel a little bit more conservative from a compositional perspective, though, like more of a single, if that makes sense. We've also got a lot of real estate left, so I wonder what we're going to fill it with. Oh, and we're doing a fade out. Oh, okay. We're doing a fade out. Nice. Nice. Well, not entirely a fade out. See, that's another sort of like twist and turn. You think we're having a fade out and everything's kind of cutting out, and then you just have the choir being a lot more kind of, a lot more clarity to the tone of it. But that was Lovesick. So my understanding of this track, number 6, is that we've not just realized how much we've fallen in love with this person. We are now starting to get into a position where we are really starting to get messed up by this. We you know, the lyrics. In the morning, you're not in my bed, I'll just sleep until I fall dead. To the memory of your lips. God, I'm so lovesick. What have you done to me? And then the choir just continues. Yeah. The choir, I think, continues simply because they've just got no more words to say at the end. In a way, I think that's like a sensible thing creatively. You don't need to necessarily have someone... You don't need to say more than what Laufey has done at this point. I mean, like, they stopped singing around the 2-minute 50 mark, just having the choir there. You can still hear Laufey doing those vocal takes and those vocal runs of various layers, as well as the ones at the end. But I think part of the strength of this is that they say what they need to, and then they bow out, and then they allow almost the chorus above shot parts just to kind of signal the mood and kind of like fade us out. I think that's a smart move there, not over explaining things. I think also the extra intensity to the vocal performance there, like the more of the push the Laufey has in those chorus sections. It's just nice to hear a bit more oomph there. Like, clearly we are comfortable. We have such phenomenal control of our various little, not just main notes and voicings, but also the very sort of like twisty legatos and sort of like finicky passages there. There's some parts where we're incredibly quiet, but still manage to sort of navigate these really complicated runs. I think there's this interesting push with the kicks, dun 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 dun, which is again a bit more aggressive than what we've had further, almost like a more sort of like strained heartbeat there, with the chord progressions and guitar parts that we've heard. Like I think the palm muting adds a bit of edge to it texturally, which I think makes sense considering the dissonance within the subject matter. And it does almost feel a bit melancholic, primarily because I don't think sort of lyrically we get to a point of clarity. Like we don't know where we land apart from feeling unwell. And then the choir, it sounds majorish, but it loops back into itself.
Still haunting me when the gold rays.
I like the use of space as well before things like these November days still haunting me. I like that we're not just consistently having notes carry over, that we're letting the listener kind of prepare for the next part. Because when Laufey is more sort of like forceful or direct with things there, it how do I say this? It takes by surprise, I suppose. Okay, and you've got those little keys as well, those arpeggios there as a final note, which I think are a nice contrast to some of the palm muted guitar elements there, providing a bit more sort of coloration there, additional to any of the melodies that Laufey is singing there. But I think, yeah, it's more of a predictable kind of chord progression and bass line to this, with more sort of like forward sort of performance that I think would reach a wider audience. And I'm unsurprised that it hit 100 million plays. It's just, it's charming. The structure as well is a bit more sort of like contemporary and familiar. Although to be fair, we've had verses and choruses in other tracks as well. But we've got California and Me, track number 7, featuring the Philharmonia Orchestra. Have we listened to this one as well? I feel like we have.
You'd go back to New York.
Oh, the flutes as well.
Consider me when you run back to her. You don't have to hide it. I know why you went. Said you needed space. I know better than that.
Sorry to interrupt, Blue Dinner Box. I now understand why this track exists. I think this is one of the benefits of an album, is that you get it all in context.
Could have fought for you, but I just let you leave. Hurt too much to consider. You didn't love me. The mountains of valley will weep through the night. Driving down sunset's a terrible sight. Left me in the ocean for your flame.
Ooh.
Holding back my tears, I couldn't make you stay. Can't quit this, so damn wicked to leave California and me.
Oh, we go to the resolving note. Nice.
Imagine you holding her in your arms, laughing about how I thought that you were the one.
How old is
I
Laufey?
get so anxious and maybe I'm young. The first sign of trouble and I bite my tongue.
It's really interesting because Laufey could have ended on the extended note, the 7th, rather than the root. Damn, she's young. She's way too young to be this mature, man. That's crazy. Congrats to Laufey for that. Don't get me wrong, I know that, like, how do I say this? It's like we do include some, like, lexicon of, like, a younger person, but we just seem like such an old soul at the same time, and I think they would have been 24 when this came out. Like, what is their future music gonna be like if this is the current condition they're in? If they're already discussing things like this? Because it's not that you have to be a certain age to discuss certain subject matter. It's the way that you incorporate it into your music, or rather your music incorporates into your vocals. It's just really, really sensible musicianship. I'm not stopping the review, by the way. I'm getting some water, but I'm really impressed with what they've managed to accomplish. I feel like their life is going to be tremendously simple, at least from a musical career perspective, given the amount of their prowess at this point in time. I can immediately understand why they are so successful, and I'm thankful to be reviewing their album today, as I haven't thought to review an entire album from Laufey before, but I thank Dinnerhe for that, for their request. The monthly annual album review. I'm just gonna get some water. Be right back. So, what should we say about this? So this is California and Me, and I've spoken about it in a previous live stream, but effectively, I think that this song is now about this person that Laufey loved, and how they've gone back to their old flame in New York, and how things have just completely fallen to pieces. When you add the context that they weren't even sure if they should have necessarily gone with this person in the first place, I think it gives further fuel to the fire there. They talk about driving down Sunset's a terrible sight, and almost like, how do I say this? They initially spoke in a previous track about the fact that when they were driving and everything, the traffic didn't bother them and stuff like that. And they continue to go back to like moments of their everyday life and compare it to that. And they show a sense of self-awareness. You know, I get so anxious and maybe I'm young. The first sign of trouble when I bite my tongue. Yep. And then, just great play on words there, you know. Left me in the ocean for your flame. It's just, can't quit this, so I'm damn wicked to leave California and Me. That's brutal. You feel incredibly for Laufey. I think because this song is put in a position in this album where you know how much it's mucked them up, and also how much they didn't necessarily want to fall in love because of their porcelain heart they had at the start. So again, I remember saying this is kind of like a Disney film when I first reviewed it. And I would say this entire album is kind of like that for me. I just feel like it's just a big movie that's put into audio form. You can clearly and vividly understand the perspective of Laufey as well as the story that's being told across both the individual tracks and the album itself. And I think that there's just general sort of like magic to the additional inclusion of the Philharmonia Orchestra within this. Like the use of the flutes, the clarinet or the oboe solo that we had at the halfway point sounded just gorgeous at the same time. It was very sort of like wistful. The piano arpeggios that you have, further exploring those sort of like extensions and the chord harmonies and stuff like that in a way that I think if you played those chords as a whole as opposed to arpeggiato, it just would have been like a little bit too blunt. So I think that the ascending and descending sort of like positions there were just tremendous to listen to. You got little kind of like kind of like flutes dancing around, the little call and responses from some of the other elements as well. I think there's also a harp in there as well, which I might not have mentioned earlier, but there's like an alternate kind of arpeggiating device to the piano. It's just got a sense of majesty to it that I feel it gives it more of a kind of a, again, a fantasy feel to it, almost like the illusion has been shattered.
Oh, damn, it's so anxious.
And I also think just knowing to allow space for those orchestral layers to be within the ether without trying to sort of like decorate things too much, you know. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Laufey knows when to bow out with the story being told, allows herself to be the focal point where required, but also gives plenty of precedence to all the other talented musicians that they work with.
That you'd go back to New York. Don't come.
And I just also think, as a general sort of like comment, there's never been a position or a moment where like Laufey has sort of like missed a note or been out of tune or rhythmically been kind of like it's never been done in a way where it seemed alien or uncomfortable, uncertain. It's always very sort of like I would imagine Laufey would probably be a perfectionist. But then there's this kind of like the strings kind of create this sort of fluffiness. It's like a warm blanket. This entire album is like a warm blanket, and it's there to kind of walk you through the self-care and love that they need to in order to forgive themselves for falling for this person in the first place. So ultimately, I think that's the first half of the album, if I'm not mistaken. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it so far. We have Nocturne, track number 8. Does Laufey play the piano? I think they do, don't they, if I'm not mistaken. We might have spoken about it before. Ooh. I recognize that melody there. Great return to it. Just gotta really sneeze for a moment. I'm sorry. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I just needed to sneeze for a moment. I didn't want to sneeze into the microphone, you know. You know how it is. So let's discuss Nocturne. I think that as a palette cleanser for this album, up until this point, it was like great to just hear Laufey, I presume, play the piano by themselves. Clearly they don't need... Hang on a minute. Clearly they don't need any help to play the keys. They're just very sort of proficient on it. You know, like there's a great sort of sense of like, it's very organic. Like you can tell they haven't tried to quantize or anything. They just simply can cover things really neatly. It almost has sort of like a lounge jazz feel to it. But the way that it's been mixed and mastered at the same time isn't as full-bodied as that. We didn't sort of like soak up too much of the low end with the keys. I think to be fair, we were kind of in that mid-range for most of the time anyways. We weren't trying to go too low with the keys. But like we just did, it was well EQ'd. I think that the piano was well EQ'd for sure. And again, dynamic range, the actual sound of the piano, it isn't the same loudness the entire time, which is really good. The last thing you need is a piano being choked when you're recording it, especially as a solo piece. I liked that we returned to that kind of vocal melody of like another track. I can't remember the exact name of the track, but it's a vocal melody from another Laufey piece, if I'm not mistaken. And just having that there is almost like their voice speaking out in another format, almost as if we haven't found that resolution yet. Or maybe the track, yeah. And I think, you know, following on from that, we have the capacity to understand when not to overcomplicate the harmonies, to work with different sort of like key patterns on the left and right hands, and to establish sort of a ground bed, to be able to take it away and have that voice come in on a higher range, a bit more sort of delicate and tender, and then to have that kind of ABA structure across a 2.5 minute piece that doesn't overstay its welcome. Again, it's I just think if you had quantized this, it would have ruined it. If you tried to play a quote unquote perfect performance as well, it would have ruined it, I think, because it's just allowing notes to kind of jump across from each other. It just makes it a bit more sort of real sounding, I suppose. You can kind of sort of liken it more to a human being working their thoughts and emotions and feelings out. Because they're not robots, you know what I mean? So, yeah, that was just a fantastic little interlude there. It was nice to sort of like stretch things out a little bit. We got Promise, track number 8, or 9, should I say.
I made a promise to distance myself. Took a flight through aurora skies. Honestly, I didn't think about how we didn't say goodbye. Just see you very soon. It hurts to be something, it's worse to be nothing with you.
Oh. Almost R&B-ish with the approach to that tale there.
So I didn't call you for 16 long days, and I should get a cigarette for so much restraint. No matter how long I worse to be nothing with you. I've done the math, there's no solution, we'll never last.
Oh, that voice break there, man.
Why can't I let go of this?
So raw for Laufey as well, you know. You can tell they're really going through it. Or at least Laufey is. Sorry to interrupt as well. I've noticed that she consistently calls him boy. And I'm wondering if it's because to her, he's not a man, if that makes sense. Like, he's not a real man because of the way that he's behaved.
So I broke my promise. I called you last night. I shouldn't have. I wouldn't have if it weren't for the sight of a boy who looked just like you standing out on Melrose Avenue. It hurts to be something, it's worse to be nothing with you.
Interesting lesser evils kind of argument there, eh?
It hurts to be something, it's worse to be nothing with you.
Excellent. So that was Promise by Laufey. So let's talk about Promise. As a song, I think that at this point, Laufey is just destroyed. They're realizing, you know, they know they shouldn't have rung, but they did. They're just desperate. They're desperate to have something rather than nothing. She saw someone that looked like the guy that she was into, and so she just couldn't help herself. She needed to confirm it. She needed to have that, and it's just a continuation of how lovesick Laufey is at this point. It's just, you kind of know immediately how this will probably go, but it's also just so visceral hearing her walking herself through it. And they sound like they're struggling. There are some voice cracks in the vocals which indicate a sense of stress on the chords there, some of those notes being a bit difficult to get out. I like the use of humor. I should get a cigarette for so much restraint. Maybe it implies that they've managed to overcome addiction and this has been more difficult than that. Because they're kind of acknowledging they are addicted, or maybe that is what the cigarette is inferring, is that this is an addiction to this person. And it's just so finite as well.
So I broke.
And it's so quiet when they get to the "so I broke my promise" part. It really does indicate the shame that Laufey feels talking to that person and how much they almost regret it. They shouldn't have, I wouldn't have.
It hurts to be something.
The accompaniment is incredibly gentle towards Laufey at all points. There's never a situation in this track, at least, where it sounds like it's kind of going against her. It kind of reminds me of a lot of sort of like music from like Paris and French, kind of like the romanticism with a lot of the kind of accordions that they have, except with this case, it is of course the piano there.
Call you.
You've got the brushes as well, very sort of like somber and low key on the kit as well. We're just in a down, dismal, sort of like depressed state where we're really sort of struggling with the situation we're in.
Think about how we
And occasionally the strings try to lift us up. but we simply resolve back to the worst to be nothing with you part. It's a song which doesn't try to be happier than it is. Now, what I like about it, that last little piano line as well as a closing point, is that I think the lid is down on the piano. We're trying to remove the brightness from that piece. I could be wrong.
So I broke my promise.
It could just be that it's quieter and so therefore a bit gentle through the microphones, but the microphones that the keys are recorded through, but it does sound like it's very sort of like inhibited, almost like the state that Laufey is in. So I suppose for one, it's kind of discussing the fact that Laufey, as they struggle through this, the music represents that. Despite the fact we're still trying to have harmonies and melodies and rhythms and other sort of like key indicators of it being like an approachable infusion of the pop and jazzy elements, with most of this, to be fair, being more sort of like jazzy. It is trying to sort of also let you know that we are genuinely suffering without overdoing it. But ultimately, just another really effective song. Great use of real estate. Just got a perpetually itchy nose now. That's good. From the start. Now, I believe this is probably the most popular track on the album at 920 million plays. So I'm interested to hear this. I feel we may have already done that, but we'll see. Oh, we have. Immediately. Aha. Aha. Yes, yes. Good. Good. Good, good, good. See, what I like about this? What I like about this is that if you hear the single by itself, this one from the start, you get to this place where you just think she's just pissed off. She's upset. You don't have necessarily the context of everything else going into it to know why she is that upset. You can sympathize with Laufey, with what they're going through, because it's like easy to identify why it is, and isolation-wise, it's like approachable. But with everything else we've had so far, it's far more effective and endearing.
Don't you notice how I get quiet when there's no one else around? Me and you and awkward silence. Don't you dare look at me that way. I don't need reminders of how you don't feel the same. Oh, the burning pain, listening to you heart pump out some new soulmate. She's so perfect, blah, blah, blah. Oh, how I wish you'll wake up one day. Run to me, confess your love, at least just let me say that when I talk to you, oh, Cupid walks right through and shoots an arrow through my heart. And I sound like a loon, but don't you feel it to confess I loved you from the start? What's a girl to do, lying on my bed staring into the blue? Unrequited, terrifying love is driving me a bit insane. Have to get this off my chest, I'm telling you today that when I talk to you, oh, Cupid walks right through and shoots an arrow through my heart. And I sound like a loon, but don't you feel it to confess I loved you from the start? Confess I loved you, just thinking of you
I love it. I love that track so much more now that I've heard it in context with the rest of the album. I love this album. I love it. I may just simply become being a little bit too excited, and I have a tendency to do that. But I suppose I'm having a human experience just like everyone else. I love that I'm having a new sort of like impression of this and with everything else included. I can't tell whether this is simply the phone call that they're having or whether she's just like, you know, fuck it. I need to, excuse the language. I just need to tell this person this. Maybe a lot of the kind of discombobulation we've been feeling is primarily because of how we haven't been completely forthright about this person simply because we have not been we just haven't like told them, and maybe we're like identifying that maybe there's more stuff we could have do, despite the fact that I can clearly tell the other guy's just a bit of a dick, you know. We'd just be like, no, screw it. I'm still lovesick with this person. I'm still struggling with them. I know I said see you soon, but I'm not going to give up without a fight. Let's just get out in the open. And I think this is kind of it makes me feel kind of emotional. I think I understand why this is so affecting on multiple levels. Part of why this works so well is that it is far more assertive on Laufey's part. They are far more confident in their choices, not due to a lack of sort of technique or anything like that. Clearly, they're a phenomenal vocalist. But what they do so well here is they are more conversational here. They have runs and bits of head voice, and they slow down in certain parts with a sort of retardando kind of thing. But we go back to the bossa nova feel with the brushes on the kick snares and cymbals there. There's a catchy kind of perky riff on the guitars at the start, which kind of highlights certain chords, and we've got a kind of jazzy romanticism to it that kind of lets you know we're flung into the throes of passion one more time, except we're not going to dance around our feelings. We're going to get right into the nitty gritty. I like the fact that the guitar is only really on one side as well. It kind of indicates this is a one-sided conversation at that part. And then there's got the keys as well, you know, like that go on the other side of the stereo field. Now, from the perspective of an actual literal piano player, the right hand, the higher notes, is on the right side. So it makes sense that, well, for you, it'll be the opposite way around. For me, it's on the right side here. But, oh no, what did I do? Did I start DaVinci Resolve accidentally? That might make OBS angry. I didn't mean to. My bad. I'm sorry. I'm going to get out of this. But yeah, at least you guys know I paid for the studio version of DaVinci Resolve, so that's good. There you go. Get rid of that. Go. Okay, back to this. But yeah, the keys being on the right, whether it's the piano or the electric keys, they just kind of bop, and the staccato makes it sound more energized and exciting. You still have the smoothness of some of the slower attacks of those strings and stuff like that, and you have the vocal text kind of like harmonizing with those. So is that kind of like effervescent, bewitching flow of it? And we kind of navigate with a little sort of like scat solo at that half point as well. It's just such great use of 2 minutes 49 as well. There's absolutely no filler in there, is there? Such great call and response with the strings there as well, like playing some of the melodies that we have like a bit earlier and just kind of referring them. It's like a foundational part of jazz soloing and sort of improvisation. We absolutely dominate the attention span of the listener from start to finish with that one. It's such a great use of time. Da, 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 da. And I like the sense of humor with it, with like the blah 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 part. I just like how real that is. That we're not trying to sort of like sugarcoat it. We're just getting down into the nitty gritty of it here. I think that just makes it more authentic. And I think that tying back the track to certain stylings from earlier on in the piece is wonderful because you get the impression that this has been from the start. The instruments that are included, the chord progressions they have, some of the ideas harmonically they put forward, the stylings, etc., have been consistent throughout this. And I just think at this point from the start, she's learned from everything she's gone through, and now she's just ready to sort of take stage. So it will be interesting to hear what the remainder of the last 4 tracks of this album are like. But for now, it's just wonderful. Wonderful.
Walks right through and shoots a narrow
And you have additional points of like interest, like the guitar, the piano layers on the right sides as well. But those are like re-listen materials. Those are like, hey, this is additional context you'll get if you kind of hear it again. And I just feel like any song which has a different experience the second time round, or like as part of an album listen or something like that, is one that's very well crafted. It just needs to be enough on its own at the same time. So it can be listened to actively, it can be listened to passively. Absolute banger of a track, and I completely understand why it's so successful at all. Again, almost 1 billion plays. It's wild. We got track number 11, Misty.
Look at me. I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree, and I feel like I'm clinging to a cloud. I can't understand. I get misty just holding your hand. Misty, walk my way, and 1,000 violins begin to play. Or it might be the sound of your hello, that music I hear. I get misty the moment you're near. Can't you see that you're leading me on? And it's just what I want you to do. Don't you notice how hopelessly I'm lost? That's why I'm following you, following you.
Ooh.
All on my own. Would I wander through this wonderland alone, never knowing my right foot from my left, my hat from my glove? I'm too misty and too much in love, too misty and too much in love.
Wonderful. Wonderful piece. Although I'm not really sure how it carries on from the previous one. It's an interesting juxtaposition or contrast between From the Start and Misty. Is From the Start what we want to say but we can't because we're struggling to deal with it, like we wish we were that person? Is that how I'm supposed to take it? Because I think Misty is more discussing how we still feel lost in that wonderland, bewitched by it. You know, maybe allowing ourselves to give in to the love we have with that person, trying to sort of reinvigorate the romance or relationship is left us in a maze that we're struggling to escape out of. And we're kind of saying that we want to be, you know, can't you see that you're leading me on? It's just what I want you to do. She's still absolutely head over heels for this person that she's discussing, despite it. And it just makes it incredibly, like, I think the last track, Bewitched, is maybe going to be her sort of like final overall comment on it, which I can't help but love, in a sense. But yeah, honestly, Misty, it's a beautiful song. So we think that it's about someone being lost too much in love and struggling to sort of like break free of the trance that they're in, but they're kind of choosing it at the same time out of their own volition. I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree, and I feel like I'm clinging onto a cloud. There's lots of imagery of like the skies and clouds and stuff like that, as if we're flying high up in them. Misty with the clouds as well, you know, just holding your hand. So clearly they've gotten back together, I think, at this point.
And 1,000 look at me.
They're kind of like discordant. There's a chord there that's kind of uncomfortable, almost like there's a tense drama and tension looking at her as she's struggling through this. But the track becomes a bit more sort of gentle later on, as we have the drums kind of slowly kind of saunter us through this. The bass underneath kind of again. Or is it just simply the piano there?
Can't you see?
No, there is definitely a double bass there alongside the piano as per previous tracks within this. The chords, again, with those major and minor sevenths. Oh, but some chromatics as well. But that, like, that wonderful kind of like rise up and down, the certain emphasis on certain words there, sort of like playing around with like the intensities, the drama of it, as well as just like trying to different ways to show our abilities as a vocalist, kind of going up and down like that. It's just fun with words. It's fun with the kind of playing with the amount of expression we can get out of it without being too much. And then that kind of like resolution downwards, like we're falling deeper into it, kind of makes you wonder whether or not Laufey is actually going to get out of the situation they're in. So at this point in time, I think what we've managed to sort of craft and sort of create is a world where things are unknown. So it's like, even though there's this wonderful vibrato and it's very sort of like bright sounding and stuff like that, and there's some sort of like it's still a sad sounding song. I'm just not sure where we're going with this at this point. I'd like individually though, the track is very effective across the board. There's not a note out of place. And suppose we just got serendipity, right? Track number 12.
I won't pretend I've been desolate. I won't pretend I've been blue. It happened so quickly, 1 second it hit me. I've fallen quite hard over you. I won't pretend I've been anxious, just like I've always been. This time it's sticking and time just stops ticking when I have my arms around you. 4-leaf clovers and lucky dimes, coincidences and cosmic signs have proved that I am quite naive. I'm falling fast, feeling gravity, and
Serendipity.
Ran into you on the corner of 90 and Central Park West. Oh, how it thrilled me. I thanked the big city, and this I will rarely confess. In years when we're losing our memory, the world's taking leaps over time. I hope that you'll look at me like I'm still 23. Hope that you'll still be mine. 4-leaf clovers and lucky dimes, coincidences and cosmic signs have proved that I am quite naive.
Wonderful harmony with the strings there.
I swear that this time it's serendipity.
Wonderful. Really special music. Really special music. Serendipity. So, I've kind of lost myself at this point a little bit with Misty and then Serendipity. I think maybe now that we've confessed our love, we are now kind of like maybe discussing the stuff we want to say to this person, or either we're kind of coming to terms with the person is back in our lives. I think, yeah, they just see this as basically, because serendipity, as I understand it, is the faculty of making fortunate discoveries by accident. They come across this person and they change their lives. Maybe there's another person that they're discussing. I'm not sure. I don't know. But let's presume it's the same person because she hasn't mentioned two different boys. Or maybe it is a different boy that looked like him that she's fallen for, but then she's ringing him. But they talk about getting older and hoping that he'll still look at her like she's 23, and they want to grow old together. And I think that part of it kind of, the music indicates to me that she hasn't necessarily changed as a person. Like there's been similar sort of like affectations of certain instruments throughout this entire album. It's more that her messaging has changed. So maybe the environment around her has always been this sort of jazzy kind of influence, but like as a human being, she's just grown through this. I mean, like you've got the kind of low key keys there when she is being a little bit more sort of like gentle with herself and admitting that maybe things haven't been as great as they have been. She becomes more sort of outspoken later on when the music builds up, and you have some wonderful string and vocal harmonies there, especially when we get up to the higher ranges. You have that kind of typical piano accompaniment there, sort of like sticking with her. Like to a point now where I feel like it's relatively predictable how the piano is going to behave. A lot of this is sort of like almost like balladesque formats. But like having the triplet flow there allows for like less of a need for there to be percussion, for example, because there's like a satisfying low high pattern to it. And I think it's also like interesting to sort of like consider why we do not need percussion. And a track like this, I feel like the smoothness of the strings kind of allows for a feeling of falling or kind of rising. We're either falling or rising in this. The drums sort of usually come in either when we're kind of slow dancing through some, they go in, there's a bit more sort of like push, such as in, you know, from the start there. We don't need that oomph there. We're dreaming in our own head, imagining a reality where like our accident is like a happy one. And it's more of a simple song than some of the other ones, but I think at this point you're just kind of happy that Laufey has managed to get beyond that. It's a really pretty tune. A really pretty tune. I don't know how we're gonna end this because it feels like we're kind of getting to a point where we're happier with this person after we managed to like resolutely communicate with them. And I feel like a lot of the other sort of like feedback we're gonna give on these songs is gonna be kind of consistent throughout them. But I also feel like as a reviewer, this has been an album where like there is enough similarities between tracks to get an accurate feel within the short term of it, that you get rewarded in bits and pieces as you go through it. So equally, you can listen to parts of it, you can listen to the whole thing. It's satisfying either way. But we got Letter to My 13-Year-Old Self, number 13.
Don't you worry about your curly hair. Clothes that don't quite fit you anywhere. Voices echo in the gym. Another girl's had her first kiss. Please don't think too much of it, darling. I'm so sorry that they pick you last.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Try to say you're for and they meant laugh. I know that you feel loud, so different from the crowd of big blue eyes and long blonde hair and boys that stare. But baby, know that you'll grow up and grow so tough and charming. Write your story, fall in love a little too. The things you thought you'd never do. I wish I could go back and give her a squeeze, myself at 13, and just let her know that she's beautiful. Keep on going with your silly dream. Life is prettier than it may seem. One day you'll be up on stage. Little girls will scream your name. The days of tears and failure, fears, and no one cares will all make sense. 'Cause you'll grow up and grow so confident and write your story, fall in love a little too. The things you thought you'd never do. I wish I could go back and give her a squeeze, myself at 13, and just let her know that she's beautiful. Ooh.
That's fantastic. That's a really beautiful song. It's very different to what I was expecting in this album. I I'm not sure how to tie this to the first 12 tracks. I'm wondering if this is more of a kind of a conclusion piece. Maybe there are some things within these 12 tracks that kind of tie into that, the journey she's had. I suppose I could maybe look at it like the growth that Laufey had over the course of these 12 songs. It's kind of like she's gotten to that point after going through that now to then sort of like talk back to herself because she now knows enough to be able to let her know it's going to be okay. Suppose that's the way I would personally interpret it. Apparently this is Blue Dinner Box's Fab. Fantastic. Yeah, I think you mentioned that you like the second to last track before, if I'm not mistaken. Write your great story and you'll win a Grammy, according to her in her concert. Absolutely. I think that if you can write a story and make it and do it in a way that people want to listen to it, you're good. You're good. You're going to win a Grammy. If you are as patently competent, creatively robust, as interesting acoustically, and as talented and sort of like self-aware and skillful as Laufey, I think you can win a Grammy. Thank you also for mentioning that this won a Grammy. I understand why it did. I think that it's distinct enough to be able to sort of warrant that. I think it says a lot about pop music that like kind of a jazzy album like this one. Because I don't think there's any point in the last 50 years where you would have necessarily have had that occur. Most music over the last 50 years have been sort of like poppy or electronic or like more sort of like R&B oriented, if I'm not mistaken. To have something go back to the classics of the 30s through 50s and 60s, to be able to bring this back to in such a strong way that you'll have this kind of like affectation and reward for it. I just think it's really fascinating. You know, I think that Laufey deserves it. I think part of what works so well with Letter to My 13-Year-Old Self is that it's so kind to herself. She is so kind. I mean, like, it's just so gentle. And I think a lot of the time when we're talking back to our younger selves, we don't really know how to sort of communicate, but being kind is a good start. And I feel like using a lot of the other instrument elements we've had earlier on the album to kind of summarize this mixture of different string plucks and keys and pianos and strings and bass and drums, etc., to show our sort of maturity and growth within the genre, to sort of illustrate who we are as a person as well as a musician, and the fact that we no longer have to feel that way about ourselves. But the fact that we don't immediately kind of take this as an opportunity to sort of like be very kind of grandstand and be like, look how awesome I am. It's very still kind of humble on Laufey's part. I mean, just the attention to detail with the little kind of like vibratos and just how sort of subtle they are. And then the call and response is not allowing things to be too empty for too long, but then also allowing things to be quiet when they need to be and allow or to allow there to be space. Just the nuance of display is impressive. Squeeze myself at 13 and just let her know. And like the use of interesting chords as well, like the majors to parallel minors, maybe skipping another note down and then can bring it back up, and those little note changes within a chord keeping most of the other remnants. It's less kind of blunt and obvious than if you had completely different chord changes. And it's part of why inversions can work so well with it when you're playing sort of like piano or sort of guitar lines there. It's just it allows things to sound smoother through less change with the color. I also think that the peaceful tone of those guitars with the kind of picked parts they play sells how soothing it is, the way that we're trying to sort of like be gentle with ourselves. I just think texturally it fits that mold really neatly. And again, you've got the strings as well, which kind of further promote that. There's no super intense over the top kind of like parts in this album, I think. I mean, to be fair, from the start was pretty kind of peppy and bombastic in comparison to a lot of the others. But yeah, ultimately just a really sort of like unexpected but nonetheless satisfying way to sort of, I suppose, get to the end of an album to an extent, where you're left in a position where you realize it's more than just a so happy ever after. Because we're just not sure how it's going to end completely. It's just that we acknowledge our growth as a human being and continue to strive for more. Bewitched, track number 14.
Wrapped me in your arms, leaned in and whispered, keep me in your heart. I'm so bewildered. What's this new desire called? I didn't know that much at all about love before, but now I think I'm learning. You bewitched me from the first time that you kissed me. Waited all night, then we ran down the street in the late London light. The world froze around us, you kissed me goodnight. You bewitched me. Every damn second you're with me. I try to think straight, but I'm falling so badly. I'm coming apart. You wrote me a note, cast a spell on my heart, and bewitched me.
Is this another dude or the same one? Because I thought they meant in LA, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong.
You're not even gone. I already miss you. What's going on? I've never been through this all-consuming fire fuming, cursing at the moon and losing all control and crying, 'cause I think I'm falling. You bewitched me from the first time that you kissed me. Waited all night, then we ran down the street in the late London light. The world froze around us, you kissed me goodnight. You bewitched me. Every damn second you're with me. I try to think straight, but I'm falling so badly. I'm coming apart. You wrote me a note, cast a spell on my heart, and bewitched me. Bewitched. You bewitched me.
Interesting. Oh, we got the magical little bells at the end, little charm. Like, what would you call that instrument at the end? I'm just gonna like listen to that one more time, just kind of get a feel for that. That'd be like bells or something like that, wouldn't they? Yeah. Okay, so that was Bewitched by Laufey. Track number 14 off this album. The last track off of the album. Bewitched. So I think that this track is more of a summary of the experience that either they've had with the original person they were discussing, or another one that they've just gotten with. Maybe it's an acceptance that they will continue to be bewitched as part of being in love with someone. The second time round, they're more sort of blunt with their feelings. I'm kind of torn because from the start, could be simply, I'm wondering if they did find someone else and they wanted to call the other person, and then they were just from the start. But no, they talked about loving them from the start. I don't know. I'm not sure how to take it. It could also be hypothetical, but then if that is her story, it's fine, you know. So let's try and sort of discuss this one before the overall conclusion. What do we think about that works about this one? Why does this track sound good? It's ultimately what reviewing is, you know, like what is this track, what sounds good, what doesn't. Because we get to the point where there is no real applicable constructive critique for an album like this. There are no weak points or moments of disinterest. I suppose the closest thing I would get is that I wasn't necessarily completely sure of the structure of it. Why Letter to My 13-Year-Old Self was there as a 30th track before Bewitched. But I feel like having Bewitched is the kind of like the post letter to ourselves, trying to sort of understand a situation that we have until we get the kind of epiphany, should I say, of what has really happened to us. We've just really just been sort of starstruck by someone. We had our emotions overwhelmed. This person has affected us like this. And I think it's actually a very mature perspective in the sense that we just have to acknowledge that we're just animals. We're just animals that feel things and our brains get overwhelmed and we don't know how to cope. And it's a natural thing if we're not used to it. I think at the start when we discussed Dreamer, we dreamed of having these things with people, but weren't necessarily prepared for when it came our way. So you've got these string flutters and harps and woodwinds. And you've got that wonderful sort of Disney intro there that was kind of similar to a lot of what we're doing with the Philharmonia Orchestra with California and Me. And it almost seems like a princess, such as in the art there. You can see her with like a tiara and stuff like that. She is the princess in her own Disney film, discussing how the Prince Charming kind of wooed her, I suppose.
Me.
And you've got that kind of fireside sort of down, up, down, up, kind of like guitar accompanying Laufey as they discuss the reality of their experience with it. But there's like all these other kind of really cute little flutters and sounds there which imply a sense of both innocence but also magic and sparkle to it. Like we're having a far more positive experience now that we fully are aware of the situation. Again, I love those string flutters as well, the dynamic range to them, how they kind of build and rise and fall. It's just so dreamy, which considering the subject matter makes total sense. And then we have kind of like massive spikes of dynamic range. They're not like specifically, 1 second quiet, 1 second loud, but just that we kind of have that life to it, that sparkle. And I think an overall comment, that's something I'll talk about at the end, is that this entire album sounds like it was recorded with a live orchestra. There were no point, well, I mean, maybe aside from Nocturne, which was more sort of a piano sort of like thing, but like it's just so great to hear. It sounds like human beings playing together with a real sort of organic flow to it. This is not something you can capture. This is not something you can capture. I mean, it's not that I dislike it, by the way. I just haven't added. You know. Who do we have here? We have. You can do it. My son, this is Takashan. My son loves track number 5. I like number 8. This album is soothing with all soft tracks, so if I play it at the cafe where I work part-time, the customers will probably feel soothed too. Thank you for playing the album at the cafe where you work. I think it's great music to play at a cafe, eh? So those are tracks 5. That's While You Were Sleeping and Nocturne. I think they're both great tracks too. Yeah, thank you for letting me know that. I think it's cool that we've each got different favorites. I think From the Start is mine, but primarily because of the different experiences I've had with the album, as I mentioned, as well as by itself. I do like California and Me. I do like While You Were Sleeping as well. I do also like Letter to My 13-Year-Old Self, just because I think everyone can be a bit kinder to themselves. I think there's many different tracks that have a really sort of like lovely quality to them.
Cursing at the moon, you wrote me a note, cast a spell on my heart, and bewitched me.
And there's just such like, I don't know how to describe the string parts and what they're doing there. It is really Laufey is the center kind of focal point, with all these other magical elements coming in and soaring over top and not just reinforcing the chord progressions, but also washing over it. Like you can imagine the music washing over Laufey and these feelings that she's having kind of sparkling in the ether.
Cursing at the moon and losing on my heart, and
But I think the major leaning, the major resolution to it, I think what the music is communicating is kind of a closing comment before we go into the conclusion, is that Laufey feels positively about the opportunity she's had to go through this. I feel like the ending of this with the major resolution and the key signature is saying, hey, even though I went through this hell, I've never really been angry. I've more sort of been bemused at some points and a little bit kind of irked, but we now appreciate that the person existed in our life in the first place. So I think that we've managed to create 14 similar yet still unique aesthetics with some that are arguably quite close in purpose, but that are never expected or predictable. And in totality anyways, like a lot of the instruments are similar throughout, but just I'm really happy with this album, and we're going to talk about it more in the conclusion, I suppose, because it's conclusion time. I probably should just be here, shouldn't I? So this is the conclusion, I suppose, of Bewitched. The conclusion. So these are going to be my overall thoughts on this album, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general experience as a listener. I think this album, what do we think this album's about? I think that this album is about someone who has gone through a difficult time, both learning about themselves as both a human being and as a lover, as a passionate person. They initially considered themselves someone who couldn't really be touched or who was maybe above it. And I think actually, come to think of it, I'm wondering if a lot of what we discussed in the 13th track was primarily what forced our hand in terms of how we saw things with the first song. So for example, when we were 13, we weren't treated very well, or we didn't feel very good about themselves. So we just dreamt of bigger things. And then when it finally came to us, we weren't ready for it. And then we went through the ringer with these people and we just had a bad time. But eventually we managed to find positive things about it, or we found a better relationship when we're more honest and open with people. And it put us in a place where we just were happy with it or grateful for it, and we could talk about it more. I think this is almost Bildungsromanesque in a certain way, not to a huge extent, but in a way where it describes not just a typical, the guy, we thought the guy was good and it was a one-night stand thing, but actually became much more than that. It's also Laufey's growth as a human being, and it's just a very authentic story where we open ourselves up and acknowledge our faults as well as how much we don't deserve to be treated a certain way. But it never comes across as immature, banal, or repugnant. We simply have music here that treats the listener with respect. And I think also treats the guy with respect for the most part. She's harder on herself than she is with the guy or people that she's talking about. But ultimately, I think the star of the show, aside from the storytelling, is Laufey's vocals. Like, they're just incredible. Just non-tangentially, like, we just really have a stunner on the microphone. And we encapsulate and incorporate a lot of the kind of bossa nova, jazz, R&B-ish kind of pop elements there. We are incredibly soothing to listen to at times. Other times it's almost so quiet that's ASMR. It's very delicate with the balance there. Other parts with, again, from the start, we're far more assertive and we're open with the person. I think that it typically ties really neatly to what we're discussing, which is just completely sensible. You need to have expression meet the lyrics in order for it to make attention to the audience, because if you express yourself in a different way than what the words mean, it's confusing. It's like, do we really mean them? Are we really sounding happy. It's kind of, it can be effective if it's like creepy, for example, like if you're sounding really happy as you're hurting someone. But like in this situation, it's more kind of like um more kind of like sensitive, and it shows our emotional, I've said maturity a lot, our emotional maturity within this piece. But we also are very comfortable with our vocal technique, our head and chest voice, legato, vibratus. um we have great sort of awareness, situational awareness of the other instruments around us, and we typically harmonize very neatly with them. If we need our own space, we sort of do our own vocal harmonies as a kind of a response, like the choir in certain songs. But never a weak spot with the vocals. We hit each note really cleanly, and we have these wonderful adventures with these tales there, which never become predictable. Just wonderfully adept on the microphone and very easy to listen to. Very easy to listen to music to an extent where I'd listen to most of anything that Laufey would want to talk about. I can't guarantee I'd necessarily be able to relate to it, appreciate it, but because of how Laufey treats the audience with her sort of vocal style alone, the effort she puts into telling compelling stories, and her how sort of like just real she is, and how much she opens up, I think she's more than worthy of respect on that alone. It's just also that the literal rest of this album is fantastic. This track features a wide variety of different instruments. We've got different guitars, bass, drums, keys, bells, strings, a literal full harmonia orchestra there with like oboes and like key arpeggios and all sorts of wonderful things. We've got organs and other parts, not maybe electric keys, as well as like normal pianos. We have a piano interlude for like the eighth tracks as well, the nocturne, as well as like callbacks to some of the kind of like vocal melodies in piano format. And like if I talk about a few of my highlights in terms of the instrumental parts, I like that the piano could at some points be purely sort of accompaniment based, like playing chord progressions or like bass notes on the left hand or octaves, with like sort of like highlighting certain melodies on the right, maybe calling responses. Sometimes they would highlight a staccato or articulate certain notes within the key signatures to sort of like work alongside the vocal parts. Other times they took over and they cascaded, danced up and down. Other times they were sort of very sort of like much a part of the ether with the strings or the double basses underneath it. The double bass is just phenomenal. I love the feeling, the pull of that, how kind of like understated it is, but then like how kind of like grainy it is. I think you also have cellos with like a low kind of burn on it, and they just had a nice amount of body to the low end. Any other bass elements there almost perfectly and like sort of supported the low end and root notes there. And there was never a point where things sounded alien or discordant in that regard. Any sort of like chords that were uncomfortable were deliberate. We had some kind of question chords there or some dominant sevenths there. We were typically outside of resolution, but we almost always went back into that. Sometimes the vocals resolved to the root note. Other times they would go down a little bit as if Laufey was falling through something. And typically, even with the note choices alone, they dictated where the movement of the person was going to go. And I love that things were that literal or that symbolic or just both. It's that the overall interpretation of these instruments, even the drums, like there was a bit of push to some of the kind of brush parts, like the kick, snares, and cymbals, etc. But like we had some parts where they were very kind of soft shuffled and they're sweet, and we handled our triplets of effortlessly, our 16th quarters and eighths there. A lot of the other rhythm sections were actually the instrumentals outside of the drums. The percussion was typically very sort of chord note oriented, or again the kind of triplet flow, or the kind of bossa nova, I guess, kind of percussions, and like the kind of syncopated and onbeat parts there. But stylistically, you knew what you were getting into, and we didn't overcomplicate the percussion. Like Laufey was clearly the focal point, but we didn't. It was more about the coloration of the chords and progressions as well. I liked some of the guitar parts. I picked up arpeggios there, certain kind of chord parts there. Again, from the start there, I liked some of those choices there, and the raw kind of like tone of the kind of steel or nylon strings as well. Not overproduced or overcomplicated in that regard. I think that if I go back to here, I feel like the California and Me, the solo that we had on the woodwinds in the middle, as well as any other solo sections from the keys or the flutes or the strings there, they were either purposeful or a way of kind of flipping things around a little bit and not having so much reliance on the vocals to capture things. But in the same way, it's a song where anything they put forward was typically very palatable. And there was a lot to absorb. I think each of these tracks has their own independent amount of re-listen value, primarily because you pay attention to certain parts on the first thing, but there's little sort of nuances and sort of sub leads and little bits. There's depth to the arrangement, primarily because of the way things were mixed and arranged within the frequency spectrum and the stereo field there. The strings had this kind of, I'd say, romanticism about it, kind of wafting in and out, but they would sometimes sort of like, there's pizzicato or they kind of staccato and be short and kind of blunt. But it was mostly very kind of like friendly sounding. And even if it was minorish and kind of sort of like coded towards a sadder tone, it was never too dire. We'd typically try to sort of turn the progression around to kind of soften it or sweeten it, sort of make it more appealing to people who are passively listening to it. But for those who are actively listening to it and really trying to absorb the story, you're left in a position where it's like, oh, okay, I get that there's a bit of juxtaposition going on there. Maybe this is because Laufey doesn't really know what they want yet. And so I get the feeling that I'm missing so much as well, because again, of just what we're trying to pay attention to, which is why I'm glad I did individual sort of like conclusion sections per track. So if you've come straight to the conclusion part here, wanting to hear my overall thoughts on everything, there are like 14 sub mini conclusions. This album works very well in both in a smaller, cozy environment and an orchestra setting. I agree with that. I think that that's a really sensible decision on Laufey's part. It allows for live performances to be incredibly flexible. If you think about it, they can do so much. They can play the same album two ways. I think that there is value in making your music malleable. I think that if you make it too reliant on certain tones and textures to the point where it's detrimental without them, you run the risk of it being the only way you can hear it. And I'm glad that we didn't have that situation here. Again, this is a Grammy award-winning album, so I'm unsurprised that any of the things I've been saying today have been positive, but I nonetheless appreciate that it has been positive, because I would not have wanted to listen through an album that I did not enjoy. And that's the risk of reviewing an album, which is why I don't review many albums. But I'm thankful again to Dinnerhe for putting forward this album. I do enjoy my time with Laufey. Same with the Gorillaz album. Even the same, again, I know that I ripped on the Taylor Swift album, but there were even parts of there were lots of the parts of the Taylor Swift album that I could individually point out and go, that was good. There were just parts where it just upset me on a personal level. But there's nothing of the like here. I feel that Laufey is incredibly respectful to her audience, both people who are familiar with work, as well as those who are new. And I just think that you cannot take that for granted, or that cannot be understated, how important it is to be able, I think, as a musician in 2025, or even in 2023 when this came out, to not take your listeners' attention for granted, because there are billions of songs. You can't assume people will care. Even no matter how good you are, no matter how much exposure you've had beforehand, attention is finite, attention is conditional. So thematically, very sort of like comfortable with working across, again, extensions, more sort of blunt major and minor triads. It was mostly extensions. We were reliant on those complicated harmonies, parallel majors and minors. This diminished and augmented, maybe some susses and ninths, maybe some 11s and 13s occasionally, some sixths for sure. Extremely kind of like sophisticated stylistically and harmonically, without ever feeling confusing. And I just think we managed to combine instruments together in ways which typically matched the feeling we were going for, but also it was never too isolated or distinct. I think part of the beauty of why this album worked is not just that each track had its own sort of purpose, but also that we did keep certain elements consistent, just to tie it together, to make it feel like it was one big thing. But then, like, we chose our single very well. Again, from the start, we chose that really sensibly, simply to sort of say, hey, this is kind of coming straight in to kind of kick your teeth in a bit, and we're out. But in a way where it's still very kind of classy. Studio production, recording, mixing, and mastering, wonderful. I love the overall tone and feel of it. Incredibly easy to listen to, primarily because, I've said primarily, easy to listen to, because of the quality of the vocal performance, because Laufey can sing really well, because the harmonies are recorded really articulately, because any of the guitar, bass, drums, string, flute, woodwind, key, bass parts, anything in there is captured in a way that is not overproduced. It sits in there, and you have dynamic range, so things are not too squeezed between the quiet and loud parts. It's glued, but in a way which sounds like it's a live performance, in the best possible way. It's got orchestral levels of dynamic range. Um, but then there's also moments where it's a bit tighter, like from the start. I know I say from the start, I've paid attention to the rest of the other 13 tracks. It's just that one comes to mind primarily because it's just very distinct. Um, No issues with dynamic range. Nice and loud without pumping, so the bus compression limiting is handled. Laufey didn't need help in post. You couldn't get what Laufey was doing on the mic if you needed to have any assistance with light tuning or anything like that in post. You just couldn't. It's just too difficult to get that to sound natural. And I'm immensely thankful that they can sing as well as they can do, because I just feel like it would have ruined it. You just wanted to have a blunt human performance, and you got it with this. And that's not to say you can't have emotional performances with autotune and other parts there, but I just don't think this music, especially with a lot of the analog acoustic elements, would have just sounded as kind of quote unquote believable otherwise. Yeah, phenomenal album. Phenomenal album. No applicable constructive critique. I remember she hates reverbs and songs. Do you know what? That's really interesting. My partner also hates reverbs and songs. That's really interesting. That explains why her vocals are so short. I love that. I think it's also a testament to tone, the quality of her voice. That they don't need reverb to be part of it. You just hear it and you are faced with it, and it's unabashed and unmasked, and it's just there. It's just Laufey. And I adore that. I think that's a really brave move, as a lot of vocalists, like when I've done production work over the years and stuff like that, they will instinctively want reverb to make it kind of fit more neatly into the ether. But allowing yourself to be raw, again, I go back to the Omnipotent Youth Society. I think that they don't like their reverb in their vocal tracks either. There are some musicians that just sound so blunt because of that, and I love that tone too. I mean, like when you have a conversation with someone, you're not hearing reverb on their voice unless you're in a cave, right? So it makes sense that it'd seem like more, I don't know, but then also no, you know, that's no, it's yeah. It's all good if you like, it's all good if you like reverb. And some styles it just does need reverb just to suit the mood of the music, the other elements, etc. Okay. So then we've got my general thoughts on it from a listener's perspective, because there's just no applicable constructive critique. I just think it's a wonderful album. This album is, it was a really special time. Again, as I mentioned before, sometimes I am concerned when I commit to reviewing an album that I won't have a good time with it. I think with this one, even if I was having to do a lot of thinking and a lot of sort of pondering, I kind of came out of it feeling better than I did going into it, if that makes sense. And that isn't because I don't like to review albums, it's because there is just this sort of mild tension and unintentional animosity towards the concept of having to sit with someone telling you their story for 48 minutes. But I enjoyed listening to Laufey tell their story. And I enjoyed the fact that they didn't just go, oh, actually, no, everything's fine now. That was nuanced, and it was kind of a twisty, turny up and down kind of thing. And I like that they used their experience to talk to themselves in their 13 years of age. And I like the fact that they had a more nuanced sort of like conclusion to it. I feel that it would have been so easy to have just been like, oh, I found a new person now, or now everything's okay. To have those extra 2 tracks at the end, it's like, yeah, no, okay, we've not only gone through this experience, but we've grown from it, and we accept and understand what it is now. That's true growth. It's not just when you move on from something, but it's when you understand why. Somehow this album sounds grown up than the new album. TS new album. I think that Laufey is trying to go between being the age they are, the style of music they're doing, and trying to meter those things and find a compromise. I just think that a lot of what makes this sound more grown up is the music itself. I think that if you put this over like a Charlie XCX thing, it would have been a lot more bratty. I think it's testament almost always to the music as to why an artist is successful, because if you had even Michael Jackson, an entire album of Michael Jackson without any music would not have sold as well as opposed to if Michael Jackson had had the music behind him. I think that I don't know what Laufey would make another album about, if I'm honest. But that's not for me to say. It's for me to find out. And I think the point of an album is to explore a wider concept that you can't do within a track. And I think, again, for the final time, my experience, as I mentioned, with From the Start, being very different to the album plus From the Start, is a masterstroke. So ultimately, I'm really happy with this. Again, I know I've said it before. Thank you to Dinnerhe for the request for their annual album review, just to let people know. If I go to the big screen, if you're wanting, some people come to the YouTube channel and they want albums reviewed, and you may have watched this entire thing and been like, I would like an album reviewed. Well, if you become an SP patron at the $12 tier, you can not only get custom monthly music reviews of tracks you like, you can also get an annual album review. There's some albums that I've been requested, and I just think, I'm not sure if people are aware of it, because I don't like to go on about the Patreon stuff too much, because I don't want to seem like I'm throwing it at people. But just in case you're interested, you can get that there. Link's in the description as well. But thank you very much for watching my review of this album from an actor named Laufey, titled Bewitched. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via the various social medias and their Spotify page. Stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever. Thought of crazy stuff going on in the world. If you want to chat, the Discord link is also in the description. I'm trying to be a bit more active on the Discord, and also if you haven't subscribed yet and you want to watch more reviews, please do. I also do weekly song requests. That's been good recently. We've been doing some cool tracks from Shui Jian as well as Creo. I've got a few others coming up before Christmas, as well as my Monday videos. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next live stream. Hopefully you all had a nice Thanksgiving. I'll catch you in the next video. Have fun. Stay cool, Shredders. Spider hands out. And thanks for being a part of this live stream. I appreciate it. 3, 2, 1.